I went to a sleep clinic to figure out why I was having nightmares, and they gave me audio recordings of my own sleep talking. The first thing I heard on the tape wasn't my voice, but a low, gravelly whisper that said, "Good, you're finally listening." I almost dropped the headphones. It was a voice that sounded like stones grinding together, and it was coming from my side of the bed. But the most chilling part, right after that whisper, I heard my own voice, unnervingly calm and clear, reply, "I'm always listening." The silence that followed on the recording was heavier than anything I'd ever experienced. It was a thick, suffocating blanket of quiet that seemed to press in on me from all sides. I ripped the headphones off, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. My apartment, usually a sanctuary of quiet order, suddenly felt alien and hostile. The familiar shadows cast by the streetlights outside my window seemed to lengthen and twist into menacing shapes. I glanced at my own bed, the sheets rumpled from the previous night, and a cold dread washed over me. I had slept there. I had been there when that conversation took place. Let me back up. My name is Ben. I'm 29, and I work as an IT specialist for a soul-crushing corporation. My life is, or was, a monument to logic and order. I debug code for a living. I find patterns in chaos. I believe in rational explanations for everything. At least I used to. For the past 6 months, sleep had become my own personal hell. It wasn't just bad dreams, it was a nightly descent into a maelstrom of terror that left me waking up gasping for air, drenched in sweat, with a scream caught in my throat. The nightmares were vivid, visceral, and always variations on a theme: I was trapped, paralyzed, while something just out of sight did unspeakable things. I'd wake up with the phantom sensation of cold fingers on my skin, the echo of a whisper in my ear. My work was suffering. My social life, already anemic, flatlined. I was a walking ghost, haunted by the memory of horrors my conscious mind couldn't fully recall. That's what led me to Dr. Alpert and her state-of-the-art sleep clinic. She was in her 50s, with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to see right through my carefully constructed facade of "I'm fine, just a little tired." Her office was sterile and impersonal, all clean lines and muted colors, much like the doctor herself. She listened to my story with a detached professionalism, her expression unreadable. She recommended an overnight study, assuring me that modern science could unravel the tangled knots of the subconscious. I clung to that promise like a drowning man to a life raft. Science had answers. Logic would prevail. The night of the study was a surreal experience. They pasted electrodes to my scalp and chest, turning me into a human science experiment. The room was comfortable enough, but the feeling of being constantly monitored was unsettling. I drifted off eventually, lulled into a false sense of security by the clinical environment. The next morning, Dr. Alpert reviewed the data with me. "Your brainwave patterns are highly anomalous, Ben," she'd said, her tone as clinical as ever. "You're experiencing significant REM sleep disturbances. We also recorded some somniloquy." Sleep talking. I'd mumbled in my sleep before. My ex-girlfriend used to laugh about it. Dr. Alpert offered me the audio files, suggesting it might be helpful to hear what my subconscious was so desperate to say. Helpful. That's a word for it. Now, sitting in my living room, the city lights painting stripes across the floor, helpful was the last word I'd use. My hands trembled as I forced myself to put the headphones back on. I had to know. I had to understand. I fast-forwarded through an hour of static and my own gentle breathing before another sound emerged. It was the gravelly voice again, lower this time, almost a growl. The one at the coffee shop. The one who smiled at you. You noticed her. A pause. Then, my voice, my own damn voice, replied with that same chilling calm. Yes, I noticed. She has kind eyes, the raspy voice continued, a strange, almost hungry quality to it. Kind eyes are the most fragile. I understand, my sleeping self replied. My blood ran cold. The coffee shop. Yesterday morning. There was a barrister, a new girl with bright, friendly eyes who had smiled at me and told me to have a nice day. I remembered feeling a flicker of warmth, a rare moment of human connection in my otherwise isolated existence. Now that memory was tainted, twisted into something grotesque. It felt like a violation, as if this thing had been looking through my eyes, cataloging my experiences for its own sinister purposes. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I sat on my couch, staring at the bedroom door, imagining the unseen presence that shared my bed, that spoke with my voice. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant siren, sent a fresh jolt of adrenaline through my system. I was an IT guy. I dealt in certainties, in binary code. This was something else entirely. This was a ghost in my own machine. The next day, I called Dr. Albert. I tried to keep my voice steady, to sound like the rational man I was supposed to be. Dr. Albert, it's Ben. I listened to the audio from the sleep study. There's another voice on the tape. There was a beat of silence on the other end of the line. When she finally spoke, her voice was still clinical, but I could detect a subtle shift, a tightening. Another voice. Are you sure it's not just feedback or some external noise? I'm sure, I insisted, my voice cracking slightly. It's a conversation. It's talking to me and I'm talking back. It's talking about things from my day. I see, she said, her tone giving nothing away. Why don't you come in? We can discuss this in person. And Ben, bring the recording. Her office was just as I remembered it, cold and impersonal. She listened to the tape without a flicker of emotion on her face. She played the section with the coffee shop conversation over and over, her brow furrowed in concentration. When she finally took off the headphones, she looked at me, her gaze intense. This is unusual, she said, a masterful understatement. Unusual? I shot back, my frustration boiling over. Doctor, there's another person in my bed, talking to me in my sleep. I'd say that's a little more than unusual. Of course, she said, her voice soothing, but her eyes were like chips of ice. What I mean is, the clarity is remarkable. Most somniloquy is fragmented, nonsensical. This is coherent. She leaned forward, her fingers steepled on her desk. I'd like to schedule another study. Tonight, if you're willing. We need more data. Part of me wanted to run, to get as far away from this as possible. But another part, the logical part, the part that still clung to the hope of a rational explanation, knew she was right. I needed to understand what was happening to me. So I agreed. The second night at the clinic was even worse than the first. I lay there, hyper-aware of every sensation, my mind racing. What would it say tonight? What commands would it give my sleeping self? I felt a profound sense of dread, a feeling of being utterly powerless. Sleep, once a refuge, was now enemy territory. The next day, I sat across from Dr. Albert again, the bags under my eyes feeling like lead weights. She slid a new set of headphones across the desk. I've already reviewed the audio, she said, her voice grave. I think you need to hear this. I put them on, my hand shaking. The recording started with the now familiar sound of my own breathing. Then, the gravelly voice, closer this time, more insistent. The man who bumped into you on the street. He didn't apologize. My voice, a monotone echo. No, he didn't. He showed you disrespect, the voice rasped. It's important to teach people about respect. Go to his apartment building. You remember the address, don't you? The name on his mail. You saw it. I remember, my sleeping self confirmed. The fire escape is old, the voice continued, its tone laced with a chilling excitement. A little push is all it would take. A little nudge. A lesson in respect. I tore the headphones off, a wave of Norser washing over me. I did remember. A guy in a suit, talking on his phone, had shoved past me on my way to the clinic. He'd dropped his wallet, and I'd seen his driver's license, the address, before I'd called out to him. At the time, I'd been annoyed, but it was a fleeting, insignificant moment. But this thing, it had latched onto it, nurtured it, twisted it into a homicidal fantasy. And the worst part, a small, dark corner of my mind felt a flicker of agreement. The man had been arrogant. He had deserved something. "What is this?" I demanded, my voice hoarse. "What's happening to me?" "Doctor." Albert's clinical mask finally slipped. I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, fear, pity. "I have a theory, Ben," she said, her voice low. "It's something I've only encountered in obscure medical journals. It's called a parasitic subconscious. An entity that attaches itself to a host during periods of extreme stress or trauma. It exists only in the dream state, but it can influence the host's waking actions." I stared at her, my mind struggling to process her words. A parasite? In my head? That's insane. Is it any more insane than a voice on a tape giving you murder instructions? She countered, her gaze unwavering. This entity, it feeds on your negative emotions. Your fear, your anger, your resentment. It amplifies them, nurtures them. The nightmares were the first stage, it breaking down your mental defenses. Now, it's trying to assert control. I thought about the past few days. The surge of irrational anger I'd felt when someone cut me off in traffic. The sudden, violent thought I'd had about my condescending boss. I'd dismissed them as products of exhaustion, but now I saw them for what they were. The parasite's influence bleeding into my waking life. "So what do we do?" I asked, a desperate edge to my voice. "How do I get rid of it?" "Doctor." Albert leaned back in her chair, her expression grim. "That's the difficult part. It's intertwined with your own subconscious. To attack it is to attack yourself. The only way to sever the connection is to starve it." "Starve it? How?" "It only exists when you're asleep," she said, her words landing like blows. "You have to stay awake." For the first 2 days, it was manageable. I drank enough coffee to kill a small horse. I took walks at 3 a.m. I binge-watched entire seasons of TV shows I didn't even like. The world took on a strange hyperreal quality. Colors seemed brighter, sounds sharper. I was exhausted, but I was awake. I was in control. On the third day, things started to unravel. The edges of my vision began to shimmer. I'd hear snippets of conversation from empty rooms. I caught my reflection in a shop window, and for a split second, I saw a stranger staring back, his eyes filled with a terrifying malevolence. The world was starting to feel thin, like a piece of fabric stretched to its breaking point. I called Dr. Albert. my voice a frantic whisper. I can't do this. I'm seeing things. I'm hearing things. That's the sleep deprivation, Ben, she said, her voice calm and steady, a lifeline in my sea of chaos. It's also the parasite. It's getting desperate. It's trying to weaken your resolve, to force you to sleep. You have to fight it. Fight it. It was easy for her to say. She wasn't the one whose grip on reality was crumbling like a sandcastle in the tide. I went home and took a cold shower, the icy water a brutal shock to my system. I blasted music. I paced my apartment like a caged animal. Anything to keep the encroaching fog of sleep at bay. That night, the fourth night, was the worst. My apartment, my safe, logical space, transformed into a house of horrors. The shadows in the corners of my eyes writhed and coalesced into menacing shapes. I heard the gravelly voice whispering from the vents, from the static of the television, from the space just behind my own thoughts. So tired, Ben. Just a little rest. Just close your eyes for a minute. No, I mumbled, splashing water on my face from the kitchen sink. Get out of my head. But it's so warm in here, it whispered, its voice oozing a sick, cloying sweetness. We're so comfortable. Think of all the things we can do together. The lessons we can teach. That rude cashier at the grocery store. Your boss who takes credit for your work. They all need to learn. The thoughts it was planting in my head were no longer just fleeting impulses. They were detailed, elaborate plans, filled with a cold, calculated rage that terrified me. I saw myself tampering with my boss's car, rerouting network traffic to ruin a colleague's career. The parasite wasn't just a passenger anymore, it was trying to grab the steering wheel. I stumbled through my apartment, my body screaming for rest. My legs felt like they were filled with lead, my eyelids were impossibly heavy. I tripped over a rug and fell, my head hitting the floor with a sickening thud. The world swam in and out of focus. And then I was no longer in my apartment. I was in a dark, empty space, a void. In front of me stood a figure, tall and gaunt, its form shifting like smoke. It had my face, but it was a twisted, cruel parody. Its eyes glowed with a faint, predatory light. There you are, it said, its voice the same gravelly rasp from the tapes, but now it was coming from my own throat. I was wondering when you'd finally drop in. What are you? I asked, my voice a faint echo in the vast emptiness. It smiled, a chilling, humorless expression. I'm the part of you that's not afraid to take what it wants. The part you keep locked away in the dark. You invited me in, Ben. Your misery, your loneliness, your quiet little resentments, they were a beacon. And now this body is a much better fit for me than it is for you. It started to walk towards me, its movements fluid and unnatural. I tried to run, but my feet were rooted to the spot. I was paralyzed, just like in my nightmares. This was it. This was the thing that had been haunting me. It's time to rest now, Ben, it said, its voice a soothing, venomous whisper. It reached out a hand, its fingers long and thin, like a spider's legs. Let me take the wheel. You'll be so much happier when you just let go. As its fingers brushed against my forehead, an image flooded my mind. The barrister at the coffee shop, her kind eyes wide with terror. My boss, his car careening off the road. The man from the street, his body broken at the bottom of a fire escape. All the dark, violent thoughts the parasite had been feeding me, now playing out in vivid, horrifying detail. And in every scene, the perpetrator was me. My hands, my face, my body. A surge of pure, unadulterated rage, stronger than anything the parasite had ever manufactured, erupted from the core of my being. It was a primal scream of defiance. This was my mind, my body, my life. No, I screamed, the sound echoing in the void. The force of my own will, my own identity, slammed into the creature. It recoiled, its form flickering, its confident smile replaced by a snarl of surprise. "You think you can fight me?" it hissed. "I'm you." "You're a parasite," I shot back, a strange, new strength flowing through me. "And you're being evicted." I lunged forward, not with my physical body, but with my consciousness, my sense of self. I focused on every good memory I had, every moment of kindness, every flicker of hope. My first love, a family vacation, the feeling of solving a complex piece of code. I weaponized my own humanity, throwing it at this creature of darkness. It shrieked, a sound of static and grinding metal as the light of my memories burned it. Its form destabilized, the smoke-like tendrils that composed it starting to unravel. It was a battle of attrition, a war fought in the silent landscape of my own mind. It fought back, dredging up every failure, every regret, every moment of shame from my past. But for every dark memory it threw at me, I countered with one of light. I don't know how long we fought. In that timeless space, it could have been seconds or centuries. But finally, with one last, desperate push, I felt something snap. The creature dissolved into a cloud of black dust, its final, enraged shriek fading into nothingness. I woke up on the floor of my apartment, the morning sun streaming through the window. My head ached, my body was bruised and sore, but my mind was quiet. For the first time in months, there was only one voice in my head, my own. I called Dr. Alpert. I told her everything. She was silent for a long time. "You did it, Ben," she said finally, a note of awe in her clinical voice. "You fought it, and you won." It's been a few weeks since that night. I've been sleeping again. Deep, dreamless, peaceful sleep. The nightmares are gone. The anger, the resentment, the feeling of being a passenger in my own life, it's all gone. I feel lighter. I went back to the clinic for a follow-up. Dr. Abbott wanted to do one more overnight study, just to be sure. I was hesitant, but I agreed. The next morning, she handed me the audio file. I listened to it in her office, my heart pounding with a familiar fear. The recording was 8 hours of silence, just the gentle, rhythmic sound of my own breathing. I felt a wave of relief so profound it almost brought me to my tears. It was over. It was finally over. I'm telling you this story as a warning. Be careful what you let fester in the dark corners of your mind. Your anger, your fear, your loneliness, they can be a doorway. And you never know what might be listening on the other side, waiting for an invitation. But there's one last thing. A loose end that keeps me up at night, even now. Just as I was about to leave her office, Dr. Alpert stopped me. She had a strange look on her face, a mixture of scientific curiosity and something else, something I couldn't quite place. "There was one thing, Ben," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Right at the end of the recording, just before you woke up." She played the last few seconds of the tape. There was the sound of me stirring, of the sheets rustling. And then, so faint it was almost imperceptible, a single, soft sound. A whisper. It wasn't the gravelly, monstrous voice of the parasite. And it wasn't my own. It was a voice I'd never heard before, a woman's voice, and it said just one word. "Good." Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and give this video a like. We appreciate everyone and can't wait to bring more stories your way.